Hey, welcome to HardAssetsInvestor.com. I'm Mike Norman, your host, and I am here with the second part of my interview with Joe Fischera, who is the CEO and co-founder of Sabre Partners. In the last interview, you concluded a little bit saying cautious to pessimistic, quite a long trajectory for a comeback, maybe 10 years, you're saying. What about the classic, the Keynesian response to this? More government support for economic output, employment. I mean, why can't we do that? Why shouldn't we do that?
Well, we have had a good stimulus bill, and that's what I think is going to have the
but don't we need more?
Well, we have to worry that you don't want to overstimulate. That we still have the situation where we don't want to have inflation away. We're going to have to come back out.
But you have 13 million people out of work. You have 30% of our industrial capacity that sits idle. You have 5 million unsold homes, 3 million unsold vehicles, 43 million people without health care. We're not using up the capacity. We're nowhere near using up the capacity that we have, right?
Absolutely. And that's why it's a long, slow recovery, because with the economy that was previously done on 70% of consumer spending, and consumers are so scared now and cautious, moving from a negative savings rate to a +5 in a very short period of time, and looking at that your retirement age and this shock, it's not that they're necessarily going to go out and start buying at that same pace. So yes, you sometimes have the government come in, but you just say, what will the government be spending on and doing? Where will they be spending the money?
Does it matter?
And we can.
I mean, that's the classic, the multiplier. I mean, does it matter if they spend? I mean, it's the same. Isn't it the same concept as trickle-down economics?
We don't want complete, this is a blank check for the government just to do anything and have more waste and inefficiency in government. Obviously, taxes are one part. Obama is committed to not raising taxes on people below 250. I think that boxes him in. I think there's a necessary need to sort of restructure we need a 1986 Reagan-esque moment where we restructured the entire tax system, lowered rates, cut loopholes, and looked at all the incentives and disincentives. Because the key here is to try to stimulate growth that will be sustainable in the long term, and that for us to have a system that doesn't have various disincentives or skewed incentives to do things that can get us into more trouble.
Here's what bothers me. I mean, it seemed like when Obama came into office, his gut instinct was correct. I thought that he said, look, the government's going to step in at this point to avoid a national disaster.
And he has done that.
And he's done that. But recently in the rhetoric, I would say in the last month, I think there's been a change in the rhetoric, and he's become much more sensitive about, like, the deficit, for example. And this is exactly the same mistake that Roosevelt made in 1937, 1938. We were starting to pull out, and then we balanced the budget. We went right back into a mini depression.
I doubt that will happen, given both my knowledge of Ben Bernanke, who was a colleague of mine at Princeton. I served on an advisory council with him, and his knowledge of that and this, what we've learned. We're not going to be contracting in this time. We're putting up barriers. But it's just the notion that if you try to do it too fast, you're going to overshoot. This is why I say it's a longer-term thing. It still will be positive. And this is the impatience aspect of it. You want it back right away. Everybody wants the good times to be back right away. And every time that happens, what we often get is an overreaction, a misreaction, overkill. And that's not what we have.
You know why I say that? Because, to be honest with you, I look around. I don't see anything wrong with the economy. It's not like we were destroyed in a war or hit by an asteroid. I mean, everything is there to create wealth and prosperity, and it's like we don't want to engage that capital, both the physical and the human capital, because if we do, we label that socialism. I just think it's wrong.
Well, yes, the labelism of socialism, the government taking over it, I think you still want the private sector to try to create the jobs, not to be on the government payroll. Because again, governments tend not to be efficient in their management or in their structure or their knowledge of the different industries and such. You want them to be the cop on the beat. You want them to make the rules and not keep changing the rules. And what we've got to make sure that we have the incentives. The key that the government can do is transparency, using the technology to give information and make the markets work. And when it sees it out, rein it in with some real enforcement. Not these parking tickets that we give people, and they settle and go on. But some guy always said, it's turn the parking tickets into moving violations, where when firms or other people do multiple things, there's a ratcheting up, there's more pain, and so that maybe we'll get some more discipline into the system.
All right. You're cautious, but cautious, maybe pessimistic. But I like what you're saying. I think you're a rational guy.
We'll get out of this, but it takes time.
Like this. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Thank you.
That's it for this interview, folks. But as I say always, a lot of good resources here on HardAssetsInvestor.com, and we'll be back with more in this interview series. So take care. So long for now.